In 3, 2, 1, we are live. And by live, I mean we're pre-recording this so we can edit it down for you later in case we make any mistakes like I just did. Welcome to the Beyond the Device podcast. I'm joined today with the fantastic Pete Plotas from TRUCE. Did I say your last name right, Pete? Plotas? Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yep, Plotas.
Plotas. I put a little bit more zazz on that for some reason, for no reason. But Pete's here with us today from the TRUCE team. We're going to be talking about contextual mobility platforms and what that is and why TRUCE is so valuable and something that you guys should be aware of for 22 and beyond. Now, Pete, I work with you, but before we play, and we're going to play a video about TRUCE, which I think explains it really well. But just before, could you tell us a little bit about who you are? We're going to play that video and then come right back.
Yeah, thanks, Reid. Pleasure to be here. My name is Pete Plotas. I'm our VP of Global Alliances here at TRUCE, and we partner with the good people at 3i and hopefully with all of you, the community, to really make sure that connected workers in the mobile space get what they need when they need it.
All right, so what does that mean? We're going to play a video for you. I'm going to click a button right now. Did that work?
Work used to be a place with a start time and an end time. And then technology exploded, work became mobile, and mobile got smart. Suddenly, the workplace and work hours weren't so predictable. Less structure, less control. And harnessing the power of mobile technology seemed to come with a choice. Limit usability or put your employees, your data, and your operations at risk. In this connected world, why should there be a trade-off between managing mobility and maximizing the value it offers to work and workers? TRUCE is the first ever contextual mobility management platform. TRUCE empowers you to manage access precisely, when, where, and the way you decide. So this nurse can see a patient's medical history here, but not here. This driver can use a map but not send or read a text. This lineman can check a work order while on the ground, but not when he's in the air. Once you define your policy, what's around a device determines what's on a device, instantly, automatically, allowing you to protect your people, safeguard sensitive data, and improve productivity. Devices are smarter than ever. Your mobile management strategy can be too, with TRUCE.
And it did. All right, and we are back. I think that video sums up what TRUCE is extremely well. It's just a nice high-level overview of what you guys can do. The video mentioned contextual mobility and the contextual mobility platform. What is that?
Yeah, so contextual mobility is really focused on the device sensing what's going on around the worker when the worker is using the device or just doing their day-to-day work. So context is what it senses, and that means things like movement, vibration, proximity, all sorts of things like that. And that context is what informs policy. And what policy means is what is accessible, when and where, and how. And so contextual mobility management is managing the use of mobility for these deskless workers in the field.
Okay. And this is really around elevated risk, right? And this is something that I know you and I have talked about before as well. Can you talk a little bit more about elevated risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So we tend to focus on those companies that have field workers that are out there doing their job in a variety of different settings. They could be doing their job behind the wheel, in and around heavy equipment, or in a premises like a warehouse, distribution center, et cetera. And the nature of their work is a bit hazardous, or it requires focus. So that's called elevated risk. If you're operating a machinery, if you're working on a factory floor in a manufacturing plant, et cetera. And so those workers that need mobile devices to do their job and are in a setting where there's elevated risk are the perfect sweet spot for those folks that really need TRUCE.
Okay. And so really the right access for the right time. I think you just said that a minute ago, which is pretty pretty great because this is much more than I always want to make sure that we talk about this. This is not an MDM because I think a lot of people will be like, well, let's have an MDM that can do it. It's like, no, an MDM cannot do this. This is not what this is. This is contextual management, not just, hey, you can't have access to this app ever. And I want to get into that a little bit, but I also want to talk about key industries. You said factory floor, delivery drivers. What are some other key industries that you guys really, really crush in? Because I know there's like one very large name that we can talk about maybe if we can actually announce that. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the name? Can I say that it rhymes with Schmermanex? Can I say that?
Yeah, you can absolutely say it. They're great.
Terminex. Sorry, it's a huge customer for you guys, and I think it's an awesome case study as well. But can you talk a little bit about some other key industries for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So the industries that we typically are feeling that customers have the most need are things like manufacturing, distribution, warehousing, field services, last mile delivery, construction, utilities, energy. Those are all represented. They all have commonalities, and that is they've got field workers, they need mobile devices, and again, their work is naturally in an elevated risk or highly focus-driven kind of work.
Okay, awesome. And then just to come back to the thing I was saying earlier about TRUCE not being an MDM, I want to make sure that we really hammer on this because you guys have something very special. It's a very cool design as far as even how it works. It's visible. So can you just talk a little bit about what that thing is and like the fact that it's not an MDM?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have a mobile device, MDM is what typically governs the permissions, the access. It distributes applications to people. So it's at that underneath layer that governs that management, the security of the device, et cetera. TRUCE sits right on top of the MDM layer and just underneath the applications. So a user doesn't use TRUCE. It becomes part of how the device works. It governs the access that worker has because of the context. And so the way TRUCE interacts with MDM is it senses context and it knows right time, right place, right user, and it tells the MDM to switch the access based on what that person needs exactly at the right time, and then switch it to something else the next moment that they move into a different zone or a different set of circumstances.
It's very cool. Again, it's a really smart design, the way that you guys brought this to market and how it works. And I know that TRUCE might be new for some folks, but you guys are not new. This is not like, hey, we found this really great small, little startup, and I think you guys should know about it. You guys have massive customers, and you have over 400 of them, in fact. So can you just talk a little bit about maybe some of that? Because I think for somebody that's, especially in the tech world, it's like, oh, this is a new tech. It's really cool, but maybe hold off until other people are using it. It's like you guys are being used everywhere.
Yeah, TRUCE is pretty established. We're the leader in what we do, but we've got over 400 customers and over 140,000 users across the Americas and Europe and elsewhere. And again, in those industries that we talked about, Terminex is one of those great customers where we have use cases for them and videos and all sorts of great testimonials. And they are a good example of how TRUCE and customers like them leverage this for all of their field workforce. But TRUCE has customers that are in mid-market size customers as well as enterprise size. And so we serve really all of those businesses regardless of their size. The key element is, do they have mobility and do they have workers that need it in the field and they need it to be accessible the right way?
Yeah, and I think one of the other, again, very unique, just to go back to like right place, right time, or right access, right time. If somebody is on the job and they leave, like if they're in a warehouse and they leave and they just walk outside and they get past that perimeter, all of a sudden it's like that's not even on the phone anymore. It's not on the device, I should say, the mobile device, if you're using a phone. But if it's like you walk outside that perimeter and then bam, that mobile device is basically restored back to its factory settings, or it would look like it. It's an amazing software. It's like it's not even there.
Yeah, I mean, take that example. That's a great use case scenario. A warehouse employee, say in a distribution company. So that warehouse employee works in a premises, and when they go into that premises, they have certain things that they have to do, and they probably are accessing certain things for their work, either on their device or elsewhere. But the point is that they have to access and quickly have available the right things that they need on their mobile device. And that needs to happen for the duration of the time that they're in that location. That includes not having access to certain things that is not germane to their work, could be deemed as distracting or just not necessary. But as soon as they leave those premises, for the day or for lunch or to go to another building. Perhaps their business says when you leave there, you no longer need access to these databases, to these applications, to these blueprints, to these schematics, you name it. So now what TRUCE does in this situation is it governs the ability for the device to automatically know that that worker has left that building and that they need other things on their device. And so it speaks to security of data, speaks to accessibility, and it also speaks to productivity. So a lot of those things come into play, and it works in both directions, as you said, when you go into somewhere and when you're leaving that somewhere, wherever that is.
Yeah, you get, again, it's a very slick platform. It's almost like privileged access management in a way. It's like, you know what I mean? Because you're like, it's kind of dances on that, because you're like you're giving somebody access to something when they need it and you're taking it away when they don't. It's a little bit of the same thing. I know it's not technically PAM, but it's very similar in its functionality. I did also want to talk about privacy. Really important thing, especially as we move into in the world we're in today. It's like the number one conversation about everything. It's all the things that are happening in the world. Privacy is always like the number one concern, especially with an application that's does what it does, like TRUCE. So you can talk a little bit about privacy, because I can imagine. So there are some folks out there that are like, oh, this is just a way to track my every move, and it's not what this is.
Yeah. So privacy is one of our key pillars for a lot of reasons, but primarily, we believe, and the software just works this way, that we don't need to know what someone is doing on their mobile device. We don't need to know that. We don't collect it. So, for example, TRUCE does not collect what someone is doing, which applications they're accessing, what searches they're doing, what phone calls, who they're calling, any of those things. But what it does is it senses the inputs of where you are in terms of your general locale. Are you at work? Are you at home? That sort of stuff. And it applies the policies of what you're doing or what you're meant to do based on your job, and other things, like I mentioned before, vibration, movement. So none of those things are private things. They're just about the context of what's going on around you. So we protect user privacy. We protect corporate privacy as well, in terms of the elements that don't need to leave the workplace. Mm-hmm. And because of our commitment to privacy, and also speaking of sort of the user experience, the native user experience that we maintain, but mostly privacy, we're the suggested, the recommended solution of Apple Enterprise. And it's because of that commitment to privacy. And that speaks a lot to kind of how we do business around mobility.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. I mean, to have that as like a stamp of approval is that's no small potato.
Yeah, we work with them and other partners, but on the iOS platform, speaking of Apple specifically, it's all about managing that user experience, but maintaining the native kind of ease of use and giving people what they need and enabling them the right way while maintaining their privacy.
That's awesome, man. Imagine enabling our mobile workers to use their mobile devices and actually be functional in the field, rather than just stripping them of everything, having them call IT constantly because they don't have the right solution. Well, that brings us to, this is a quick one today, guys. This is awesome. Thank you, Pete, for making time. Do you have any other last comments or anything before we get out of your hair?
No, I would just say that kind of keep this in mind. If you've got mobile workers, customers that have mobile workers that need mobility, they need enablement, but they need it the right way. And they need a device that becomes adaptable to what that user needs, whether they're behind the wheel, in and around heavy equipment, or on premises. That's when you think of TRUCE, and we look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete, so much for joining us, and thank you for the TRUCE software team to make time to do something like this. I sincerely appreciate it. And thank you guys for listening or watching, whatever medium you're choosing to explore this on. Be sure to click like and subscribe. Post a comment in the comment section below if you'd like to share one of those with us. And be sure to check us out on the next episode of Beyond the Device. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.